Welcome everyone to a brief discussion of the Rapid Education and Risk Analysis Guide and the recent Rapid Education and Risk Analysis exercise in El Salvador. My name is Jim Rogan and I lead this area of work for USAID's Education in Conflict and Crisis Network. We'll be going over a few slides here, but just to encourage everyone off the bat to be sure to access both the RERA Guide as well as the RERA El Salvador Final Report, which are both available online on the ECCN website. So for those of you not familiar with the RERA that was issued last year, a first draft of the guide, it's a snapshot situation analysis. And to be clear, it is not an assessment of a program or project. It is a situation analysis which can inform the pre-design, design, or mid-activity moment of a USAID project. That means that the RERA is designed to be used at any moment in the USAID program cycle. Now, as a situation analysis, it looks at the two-way interaction between education and all main risks in a given context. So for instance, for those of you familiar with the education strategy of USAID, when we speak of conflict and crisis context, we're looking at the broad spectrum of risks, vulnerabilities, and instabilities that can occur from conflict, disasters, high levels of violence, health epidemics, or political instability and coups. So for instance, this is a situation analysis that looks at contextual analysis and the relationship between those risks and the two-way relationship between education and those risks. While we look at risk, we want to be clear to say that the guide also guides users to look at sources of resilience and cohesion and what are those protective factors for learners down at the school level. When we say that the RERA is a rapid guide, this means that this can be implemented in 2 to 3 weeks, and this responds to the need to be able to have a quicker snapshot of a situation, have it be nimbler, have it look at priority issues, and have it also form a more rolling kind of assessment as part of an existing USAID project or program. It looks at secondary data, a desk review, but also allows for some limited primary data collection, and as is in the case of El Salvador, it was a purposive sample, and we'll go into that in a moment. Lastly, the most important part, the RERA really focuses on developing strong and clear and concrete recommendations based upon not just data analysis, but data synthesis, the broader, higher level patterns and relationships that can be identified from the data. And this should form concrete recommendations that are actionable for USAID programs and activities. Now let's turn to the RERA in El Salvador. The RERA was commissioned by the USAID Mission in March. It was conducted from 9 to 18 March, and it looked at really 3 main risks: gang violence, broader insecurity, and natural disasters, but the priority concern was clearly gang violence given the epidemic levels of violence in the country, focusing on primary and secondary level schools, and it looked at both secondary and limited primary data collection, a purposive sample of 8 public and vocational schools in 9 high-risk municipalities. And those municipalities are listed here. And in doing our primary data collection, we conducted on-site focus group discussions in 5 high-risk municipalities, and we also conducted focus group discussions with directors or principals from schools in an additional 4 high-risk municipalities. The range of students that we met with was 13 to 16 years. We also spoke with teachers, principals, parents, and community members, totaling about 232 respondents across these 9 municipalities. We'll now turn to some selected findings that we've taken from the actual final report to give a flavor for some of the insightful things that we found from the RERA. Now, one point about the limited and purposive sample, these findings are not intended to be representative of all Salvadoran schools or the education sector as a whole, and of course they may be biased towards the schools and communities that we did sample. Nonetheless, the findings we found offered some very important insights into the dynamics of contextual risks and schools, learners, and families and communities in the sample. The first finding was that in order to answer the question whether learning environments, whether schools were safe, we came away with an understanding that it is simply a complex situation. Respondents in all schools told us that they were safer inside the schools than in their external environments, for instance, especially compared to their routes to school that are precarious. But of course, they also cited that there is a certain gang presence and influence over internal school affairs. All student focus groups, boys and girls, said that they felt safer in school than on the route to school. One focus group of male students and student focus groups at 4 public schools said that they did not feel fully safe in school. Teachers, for their part, also indicated that they had to adapt their teaching methods and classroom management to be much more careful around students because of gang presence, and that there were students in the school that had relationships with gangs. What we also learned was that the safety of schools was very much influenced by the proximity of the school to the front lines of the gang territories. These frontline border areas, which are never formally demarcated, they can shift as gangs are in constant competition over territory and territorial control. These areas are particularly subject to provocations and violent confrontations between gangs. So the frontline realities of schools and their locations in those areas was a very important factor. What we found also was that gang members, some gang members who are also parents in the school communities, may well want schools to function. Gang members are part of the local education community, either as students or as parents. Some still value education for their own and for their neighbors' children. Teacher focus groups and principals in 4 schools reported that they established communication channels between the school and some gang members in order to protect students' right to an education and to keep the school working. And this is one of the most insightful of our findings, was that there are informal channels of communication that are happening between schools and gang members as members of the community, and that there are opportunities here to probe further to see what can be built upon. We found that the schools that sustain outreach and collaboration mechanisms with parents and communities appear to manage their sense of insecurity better. Now, here, there are a number of collaboration mechanisms that exist down at the local level or that are common practice, like parent committees, school protection committees, and community development associations. One example of a school that maintained a range of collaborative mechanisms with the community involved a range of extracurricular activities, a comité de convivencia that works on conflict resolution. Parents regularly participate in school committees. Teachers at the school spoke of a relationship of mutual respect between students, teachers, and the principal and the community, including the local gang. Where schools did not report clear, strong community outreach or sustained collaboration mechanisms with the community, those schools in general expressed difficulties in managing their sense of insecurity, managing the internal and the external gang-related risks. Respondent views diverged whether the presence of police and military in and around schools improved security. People may well know that there are policies in place now to have certain police patrols and in some cases military patrols assigned to schools and school communities. And it was very interesting for us to learn that there was quite a mixed review of how well these patrols are in fact functioning. In some cases, the respondents believed that the police and the military added to insecurity, while others saw the police as a positive influence on safety. In one specific school alone, the focus groups with teachers and male students saw the police as a negative factor, while female student focus groups thought that the police presence was positive. We noted that in some schools, male students in particular sensed fear of police, and that came from the cases when they were held up, they were frisked, they were roughed up, or otherwise wrongly profiled by the community police. And this supports one of our recommendations, of course, which is to look into how police are really functioning at the school level. Now, some of the key recommendations we made, the first was that we felt USAID needs to review its strategy and programming in El Salvador, given some of the insights that we have in terms of the school. Given a strong democratic governance portfolio that they have, we felt that they need to look at the school now as arguably the most direct, the platform for the most direct interaction between citizen and state. And given the strain of the social compact right now in El Salvador, and given some of the emergent opportunities that might be there for cohesion and protective factors in and around the school, possibly this is an opportunity for USAID in terms of working on that social compact. We also suggest USAID partners with school-based community groups to build resilience and protective capacities, for instance, assisting schools to facilitate joint participatory planning processes with community stakeholders, and leveraging USAID projects across different sectors to support priorities that they define and that are relating to the high-risk context and what they can do to reduce some of those risks. We think USAID should also support the Ministry of Education to better contextualize its national planning and programs to these high-risk realities. This means providing or enhancing social-emotional skills and crisis response training for teachers, management and leadership training to principals, as they have a major role in liaising and maintaining these kinds of outreach mechanisms with the communities, and also looking at parent skills training and psychosocial support in schools. So very risk-oriented strategies and programs that need to be brought into schools in these areas much more. Support needed also to conduct an assessment of disaster preparedness and risk reduction activities. We did not get a clear view of the status of resilience of these schools, and given the disaster risk that is very present in all of these school communities, a scenario of a major natural disaster, given the epidemic levels of violence and the desire for gangs to have total control around around school communities, these scenarios need to be probed and explored, and we need to know more about what's happening at the school level. Lastly, as we mentioned before, we need to look into the professionalization work of the community policing under the Ministry of Justice and Public Security to see whether we can improve how the ministry is training and building the capacity of their patrols to work with communities, especially working with young people, adolescents, and children in school community areas. Now, looking ahead on the RERA agenda more broadly and other pilots, the El Salvador report is now online on the ECCN website. We have an RERA Afghanistan pilot happening in October 2016, and we intend to carry out a meeting among the ECCN community to look at the various lessons learned from the RERA pilots to inform the completion of the next RERA tool. That meeting right now is planned for December. We'll keep you posted, and we hope to come back to you with a new RERA improved version, a 2.0, in early 2017. So please stay tuned, and thanks for listening. My name is Jim Rogan, and we'll be back in touch with you with more. Thank you very much.